Now, what about our non-invasive assessments for clinically significant portal hypertension, right? We don't use HVPG anymore, but we know that clinically significant portal hypertension is the most important predictor for liver-related outcomes. So this is the same compensated cirrhosis. And if you look at those that have clinically significant portal hypertension based on Baveno, defined as a liver stiffness greater than 25, and then those who have probable CSPH with a liver stiffness greater than 20 and platelets less than 150, or that 15 to 20 kPa and platelets of less than 110, you can see that from baseline to week 96, you've decreased the number who have clinically significant portal hypertension. So very, very encouraging that then this would naturally translate into improvement in outcomes. And this was presented at the liver meeting this year. Along a similar vein here is resmetirom. So this is data on their compensated cirrhotic population, open label, 80 milligrams of resmetirom. You can see that the platelet count was 125. So this is a more advanced group. And you can see the mean change baseline in VCTE, a decrease of about 7 kPa at year 2. And those that kind of would convert to an F3 from an F4, you can see 30% at year 1 and 35% at year 2. And using the similar kind of clinically significant portal hypertension Baveno parameters that efexafermin showed all the way on the right-hand side, you can see of the 100% who started with criteria that met clinically significant portal hypertension, at year 2, only 35% are still in that category. So this is very promising. Now, for the first time in our MASH clinical trials in patients with cirrhosis, we are seeing improvements that will hopefully translate into clinical outcomes and approved therapy. So with all of this, how is the field, how has this changed how we design MASH clinical trials? And so this is just theoretical, and many kind of companies are moving along this type of line. If they have a parallel F2 and F3 study along with an F4 study. So say you know that you're going to have F2 to F4. Patients have an entry-level liver biopsy, and that puts them into either the F2, F3 arm or in the cirrhosis arm. Those that are in the F2, F3 arm, they're going to get that 52-week biopsy to get that accelerated approval if they see this one-stage improvement in fibrosis without worsening of MASH. And then they're going to continue for the major adverse liver-related outcomes to support the full approval, like what's happening right now with both Rezdiffra and Wegovy, Sema, and resmetirom. But then in that upper panel group, if the NIT suggests that they've progressed to cirrhosis, that triggers another liver biopsy because the FDA is recognizing more and more progression to cirrhosis as an endpoint. And so then that group continues on for Malo. For those that are in the F4 cirrhosis arm, now there's no additional biopsy, right? We're just going to be looking for the full approval and liver-related outcomes. This is the tirzepatide synergy study that's opening up. So this is interesting in that patients will get either tirzepatide or retatrutide, which is the triple G agonist. And so the inclusion criteria is solely on NIT. So there's no entry-level liver biopsy. And they're enriching for patients who have an ELF score greater than 9 and less than 10.8, and then the VCT in that 10 to 20 kPa range. They then will get assigned either tirzepatide, retatrutide, and there's a shared placebo. And then they'll be followed for Malo. But If you have a NIT that suggests progression to cirrhosis, that would trigger a liver biopsy to see if they have progressed to cirrhosis. So you see how clinical trial design has now been trying to learn from all the mistakes that we've made and adjusted accordingly. So the last concept I'll leave you with is that drivers of fibrosis may change along this continuum all the way along. So this is data from Sammy Wang at Sinai, where essentially it's a fat NASH model. So it is mice, but the important thing to show you is that as you see moving along this progression of fibrosis, you see these stellate cells all like kissing each other. You see this network or meshwork forming where they're trying to touch each other. And when you do single cell nuclei-seq on these, the important thing that I want to emphasize, is that if you look, there's autocrine signaling loops that develop. So if you look at the middle panel, focusing, for example, at the mouse for a moment, you see the thick red circle around stellate cells. So stellate cells now are communicating with themselves, almost like on a mission of their own, and there's less paracrine signaling happening. And this is a very important concept because when you have more inflammatory cells or macrophages in that fibrotic scar, that's like hot fibrosis, inflammatory MASH. However, later, when it starts to have less of those macrophages, the less cellularity, it's kind of that cold fibrosis, or what we call burnt out MASH. And so the idea is that once we get down in these autocrine signaling pathways, the same drugs that we're using to kind of minimize upstream injury may not be effective. And this is particularly important also in MASH because we know that you lose fat as you move along the continuum of cirrhosis. And so will a drug whose mechanism of action is purely to decrease lipotoxicity, will it work in patients with a more advanced cirrhosis? So this really just breaks down so we can tack fibrotic pathways upstream. We know the thyroid hormone receptor beta. We have lanifibranor, which is a pan-PPAR. The FGF21s, a very promising class. And then, of course, we have all the GLP-1s, glucagon receptors, the triple agonists. And then you have things that might tack more the hepatocyte, and then the direct antifibrotics, which may have to be what we bring in when we have more of those autocrine signaling pathways towards the latter part of the cirrhotic continuum. And so you have to think about an evolution of targets along this continuum. So early on, very reversible, every model shows it. Upstream drivers reduce the injury, paracrine pathways are driving the disease. As you move forward and you move more and more, early F4 still can regress. But as we get more and more thick bundles, lack of cellularity, lack of fat, what is going to be that point of no return where we're going to have a very different approach? So considerations. So treatment of cirrhosis will require long intervals, better substratification along that continuum, and of course, well-adjudicated clinical outcomes. So it will be reversible in some depending on how long they've been sitting there in the cirrhotic phase. A one-stage reduction may not be the best histologic endpoint, nor can it even be achievable using standard histologic assessments. I didn't go into, AI technologies, but if you are going to use a liver biopsy, then we probably want more sophisticated approaches at looking at regression than this simply greater than one stage improvement. We need continuous rather than categorical scales of fibrosis, and the change in study design really reflects this evolving thought process. Ultimately, really outcomes matter, so that's what's most important. And we may require some additional things to help facilitate reversal. Combination therapies and cell-specific targeting may be critical. Obviously upstream, reduce the injury, but if the fat is gone in cirrhosis, as I mentioned, will dealing with lipotoxicity be enough? And maybe we need to attack those autocrine signaling pathways, the role of stellate cell apoptosis, promoting liver regeneration, which I didn't get into, but certainly we can talk about. And so with that, I'm going to end and open it up for our panel discussion.